In the last castover, I said it might be the last castover. Well, I was wrong. Welcome to Cosmonarchy Brood Wars Premonition update. We're finally starting to get this thing out here. It's been a long time in the making, and if you've only been following the development through the playlist of these videos, these castovers and design diaries, well, you're in for a fucking shocker, dude. There's a lot that changed. So let's get into it by checking out the latest map that's been made for CMBW Melee, at least as far as I'm aware. It's my map, Mouth of Bethala. We'll also be talking about all of the different changes that have taken place as we see them, at the very least, right? It's going to be a little bit difficult to intuit exactly what's happening here. And yes, I did just notice that the AI printout said that we have 3 of the same build. That's 3, and they were Zerg here, so that is the end of all things, just like this player. There's going to be some CCMU, perhaps, so let's see what happens. Maybe it'll work out well, maybe it won't, but I want you guys to get hyped, dude. There's a return of Fraudarchy later today on the 5th of November, which is when we're recording this, and yeah, I mean, I know there's some significance to that date, so I promise that wasn't intentional. It's just the way that the calendar worked out. But we do indeed have some things. So let's talk about those things. First of all, let's introduce our players and our positions, and then we'll get into some of the balance changes. This is, end of all things, the classic emoji. Western Warlords is his force, so he will be on the left side of the map, the West team. And then we have Flatulent Flapper. That's also part of the Western Warlords, so you can expect some silliness there. And 3 Bird. Yes, we indeed have 3 Zerg on one team. Zerg here. Finally, we have Null Pointer. I couldn't read his stuff because I could see his Qs now. Isn't that a lovely change? That's a while ago. Along with Fly Q7 and the Akmen, making up the eastern side of everything. And yeah, meanwhile, we also have my dog. God damn it, dog. Why you gotta do this to me in the middle of my video? We are now dogless. Truly a terrible situation to be in. So what you'll notice about this map is that it is XY symmetrical. So our Zerg Protoss in the middle here, this is the inner position. So when you end up seeing a map like this, and you are in a spawn like this, you can expect that you are going to need to prepare yourself for early action, probably, I would say, in general. This guy's gone for a fast expo. And in fact, you know, this Zerg is just about to finish, so end of all things, a little bit ahead of him, but that's what you would expect from Zerg anyways. That's not really that surprising. But the lattice is a bit telling, because if he ends up going vassals, he can cross this chasm very quickly, right? So that's another thing that's kind of interesting about this is you might be biased towards some air units, you might be biased towards some, you know, static defense or something of that nature to try to protect against that. It's all pretty interesting. I think it's going to yield some interesting permutations. And your allies aren't super far away, but they are disconnected enough that, you know, you need to have some sort of map control, maybe over here for ground armies, over here as well, the other XY symmetrical aspect of that. And that yields to some interesting results in practice. So definitely looking forward to checking this map out on Fraudarchy. I'm assuming we'll be playing it, so that's going to be pretty neat. Flatulent Flapper has gone for a Quasrock pool. I expect, you know, we're going to see a lot of Quasrock pools, just like this one for 3 Bird. And I believe there will be one over here for Fly Q7, because they are all running the same build. But that will still be, you know, there's always something different in this game. One of them will have access to more resources than the other, more build space, more distance from the enemies. Who knows what that's going to yield the AI do. We do have Hydralisks from End of All Things, so there's a little bit of variety there. And of course the Akmen, who are currently not actually fielding their god, but perhaps he will come out later after the second barracks is finished. I believe every player now has an expansion, and End of All Things is going for a 3rd. So that's kind of interesting. This must be the 3-hatch Hydrock build or something to that effect. And yeah, the symmetrical points are the mint green or whatever this is. What is this? Turquoise and yellow players. These 2 are symmetrical, and then we have our peach player and our, this is like what, Maya blue. Wow, holy shit, I'm a god. So yeah, those are the symmetrical players in general. This would really love to be a static defense structure, but AI are a little bit not interested with that, so he's going to need to grab something. And by something, I don't mean his workers, to defend with. So you can expect that to take shape. I'm kind of surprised I didn't see lattices get sent over here. If this flock ended up coming over, that would be pretty next level, obviously. And a surprising amount of damage has been achieved purely through just a couple of Mavericks walking up. So, and not exactly the earliest timing either. You can definitely see attacks faster than that in the game. So, yeah, a bit surprising. Hopefully it doesn't kill our End of All Things player, because he's got Hydras, dude. He's like one of the main sources of Zerg variety in this map. So, better hope that he stays alive. A sequestered icon, one of the first new structures that we have in the game, has been cited, two of them in fact. This is now the home of the Cantor, which has been heavily reworked, and the Architect, which is pretty much the same sort of unit. Now, those vassals would have actually commenced an attack, but it looks like they were summoned to deal with this rabble. Maybe a little bit extra excessive. I'm not sure that it's actually necessary. But don't worry, the Nathricors are here. They've been downscaled to better fit their role as a swarmer, which is just something that probably always should have happened. And, well, a couple of them are just going to get picked off by Hydras. No harm, no foul. You have some mutations happening here. You'll notice that you actually don't need a Leveral Pond to mutate Vorphricors, so its name should probably be changed then. Vassals have also been reworked recently, so instead of their stacking behavior that they had before, they release a pulse that enchants allies for 2 seconds, and it gives them 25% increased movement and attack speeds. So that's obviously its own thing, but it definitely ends up making their impact be felt a little bit harder. So hopefully that will incentivize their use just slightly more, but not that I really care about whether or not every unit is used adequately or what have you, but it's definitely something that makes me think that they will be used a bit better. And, you know, it's immediate impact that falls off after, and it doesn't have the infinitely scaling issue, which in some ways is a little bit of a misplay, perhaps. Like, it's kind of interesting that it infinitely scaled, but maybe it shouldn't, right? Now, this retaliation attack from the Western Warlords is really running amok here. This Nexus is in danger. We don't actually know if it's going to pop yet or not. A lot of scribes just got pulled because the AI is dumb, and they really need their architects to finish here. So it looks like they will be conceding that Nexus just based on the fact that more units are coming in. Yep, indeed it has fallen. A single Ahmed stands tall against Titans, against a bunch of Hydras. And I really like this response, but I don't think it was super intentional. Instantaneously throwing a couple of melee units on the Architect, forcing it to kite, while the rest of the army can sort of run amok inside the base, is pretty good. It's pretty effective, but that's been cleaned up now, so you could expect that, generally speaking, the Architect will help clean everything up. There's more reinforcements coming in as well. There is a Peach attack being massed up in the top middle, so we should expect some interesting aspects out of that as well. And there's like some weird mix of turquoise and brown in the lower middle as well. Perhaps this hatchery will... Hatcherosk, excuse me. Perhaps this base will be falling here. No, never mind. Okay. It's safe. It's safe. The loss of the Nexus and a lot of scribes does put this player a little bit on the back foot, right? So you got to see the effective range of the Vassal's passive there, which is perhaps a bit surprising. Perhaps even more surprising, the Hydralisk didn't die. I'm kind of surprised about that. And the warp-in, or the work animation for the sequestered icon, very faint. Definitely something that I would like to improve. Meanwhile, we do have some fulcrums being put down, but I don't know if they can hold off the force here. We've got a lot of infantry, but Hydralisks, now that they cost Vespene, which I haven't even really gotten to yet because there's been so much to talk about, Hydralisks are a little bit beefier than they used to be. So the idea behind Vespene here is that it's significantly altered. We have Vespene being a much more scarce resource. You only get 6 Vespene per return when you have a capped geyser, and you only get 4 from an uncapped geyser, such as this one, and which is sporting an updated wireframe that's actually fixed, courtesy of Juntrihong. And then there's a Vespene Ridge, which gives you 2 per return. And now they mine as fast as... the mining rate is always the same, and they mine as fast as mineral fields. So there's like 100% parity between mining rates. Means you really only need like 2 workers, or 2 to 3 workers per geyser or ridge. Usually only 2 workers, unless it's like really far away or something. And I think that ends up being pretty good for game balance, because it really slows the adoption rate of higher tier tech. Now, we did see engineering bay tech with the Sentinel, and, you know, the fact that this guy has the NG bay, that's pretty fast, actually. And yeah, we still have that unit AI bug. We have starports and some other stuff. So we should actually be seeing an adoption of higher tier tech pretty soon. And it looks like, not to be outdone, FlyQ7, the yellow Zerg player, is indeed going to be taking this base with the goal of perhaps defending his ally from not just opponents, but ever getting any additional resources. Isn't that funny? A lot of stuff has changed under the hood, not just in terms of, like, the Vespene changes, right? But also in terms of things like the AI requests and all this other stuff. We've really tried to make it so that the AI is better at many things. Better at defending, better at building up large units, large attack waves. He was decollided. And in general, we also want them to be, well adapted to this phase of the operation, right? We have a case where the AI is now dealing with gas, now dealing with like loads of, like the fact that the gas is much more scarce, right? And much more of a valuable, precious resource. That has required so much optimization, so many changes. And obviously not just to the game state where like a bunch of unit costs had to be different and a bunch of things were just reworked as a matter of course anyway, because, maybe I wasn't super happy with the current game flow, like I talked about the vassal change. But also think about, like, we are talking about a case where the AI, they're not super familiar with how a lot of this stuff is. Like, they needed to be updated, handheld, had all of their build orders changed. Some of them removed because they were dealing with units that were themselves removed, like all the shared units have either been consolidated into the main tech tree, or they've been removed outright. So the Excitralisk is removed, although it's coming back, but it's a completely different unit. It's basically just them reusing the name. It's not yet back in action, but it will be. The Empress and the Charlatan are now just Protoss units, and the Luminary and Tarask were also, in the cohort, were also removed, which leaves the Anticathon and the Striga as Terran units. So that's sort of like the rundown there. And that means that we've just been able to, like, assemble a better, more cohesive and less, like, conflicting tech tree, I guess, basically. We do have some new sprites as well. You probably noticed we have the new Cyclops sprite in action. This is courtesy of a model that I worked on and then passed on to Balethal. We have a ton of fucking Zerg here, dude. And we have some fucking stupid dinosaur graphic from, I forget what the game is. Final Odyssey, I believe. So, yeah. All of the Five Nations assets have been reprocessed, and we just saw a Cyprian remodel as well, but it was only for 5 seconds. And by 5 seconds, I mean 5 microseconds. I'm not actually sure. This might be too many Zerg here, dude. Like, the combined might of all these Zerg here, they can only attack ground, but there's not enough air units to hold this off, I don't think. And now you get to see the Mason Corps as well. Yeah, this is an utter disaster. There needs to be a retaliation point here, but, we were talking about game balance changes and all this other stuff. There's been huge levels of conflict and, like big forces being amassed and so many units being thrown together, and that is satisfying, dude. That's satisfying to see. Will we ever win a game of Fraudarchy? If we don't rush them down, I'm not sure that the answer is yes. That being said, this base is still technically alive. It's just that he lost so much stuff. He lost some sort of structure here, or a couple of structures that were like pretty big. I assume those were like barracks probably. He lost all of his masons in his main, and he hasn't been able to expand since then. So, I'm not sure if his other attempts were just thwarted, or maybe he's just not been doing it super intelligently or whatever. And yeah, you've seen these debug messages pop up every now and then. That is basically just like a last-ditch attempt to figure out exactly what was causing the bugs. Or to at least prevent them from negatively impacting the game. So we obviously would like to be able to fix that. And initially it seemed like if we just re-implemented AI, we wouldn't have to worry about that. Now it seems like maybe it's not sensible to re-implement AI, but that does mean that bug will still be there. So maybe we have to spend a little bit more time really trying to fix that aggressively. I'm not sure yet. And, there's always a little bit of a push and pull. The system is super complex. The fact that we have these mammoth scripts that request so many things, and then we have all of this other implicit request stuff, is pretty big, obviously. So, speaking of big, how you like my fucking Zethricore army? I don't think it's going to be doing much, as impressive as it is in terms of size, just because it's mostly Zethricore's. So, but I do like that they're getting the Muthrock Spire, like, for a while, if people have been following the dev streams, and maybe the Discord sessions that are happening on the Discord server, where I actually am streaming development all the time. There was a period of time where it was really quite difficult, actually, to make the AI build a significant number of units of a higher tier, and it seems like we've broken through that barrier. But at the same time, Protoss are supposed to be a little bit more capable of doing stuff like building transports and whatnot, and I don't see any of those, even though they have the embassy, which is the structure that now builds it. That's the rename for the Forge. And in general, it's just one of those things where it's like, okay, maybe he just doesn't have enough money. He's like still on one base after all. There are 2 bases left to potentially take, but I think at this point we've gotten to an area where the expansions, it doesn't really seem to matter about priority. I assume that there's something else preventing them from even getting the requests to expand. But they have so many fucking units that I'm not sure that it even matters, but I will indeed be trying to improve that over time. But it's in a state that is at least playable. They will at least take a couple of bases, and then if we can make it so that they, stay true to the game and just give it their best shot. I mean, you're seeing untold amounts of units. When I said we were hitting CCMU on a pretty compact 3v3 map, I wasn't kidding. I don't know where we're going to get it to it eventually, but we are hearing the bell toll for some reviving units. That means that there's a captaincy on the field, and at least one apostle was trained, although I don't see it, so it might have already died. The apostle's ability has also been reworked to the point where when you cast the ability, the initially what occurs is you end up with a channel, basically, but it's not a channel, it's like a delayed effect. So you can still walk the apostle around, you can still attack and do stuff, but the big deal is when you use the ability, there's a 2-second delay before it actually takes into effect. So you can cast it and then move it into position. You can cast it and then have it be destroyed right before it procs. And that also prevents you from just mashing the button, assuming you have enough energy, which is what the AI were doing, basically, is the equivalent of mashing the button. So I think it's just a significantly healthier version of the behavior. And even though it's a nerf, it actually feels better and more satisfying to do as a player, for me. Of course, there's some situational things you can pull off with it, like, casting it and then moving it. We're going to have some units that, like, teleport units or whatever, like similar to the Didact, but a little bit more shorter range. And so there's going to be all sorts of action that you can do with that, where it's kind of potentially interesting if you have more behaviors that work that way, where there's like a stagger or whatever. So yeah, we're not seeing the Protoss Armada necessarily. We're seeing a lot of Architects, which is pretty satisfying. And we're not seeing too many of the new units. Like we saw the Sikralisk, which is the dinosaur graphic. We saw the Protathalor, which I had selected a few times. That's like a swarming artillery unit, you could think of it. It's insufficiently or insignificant by an individual basis, but still pretty powerful. Obviously, the Architect should be able to kite over cliffs. I'm not sure why he doesn't do that. But maybe it's not even super easy to tell the AI to do that. I'm assuming maybe that last part is probably what's happening. But yeah, there's all sorts of ideas that we have for trying to improve things. Obviously, there's like trying to fix the bugs that are causing those printouts that sometimes flood the whole screen would be really nice. And especially, it's like mandatory if we're going to release campaign content, because otherwise your immersion will just pretty quickly be fucking broken. You'll be like trying to focus on the game and then you just get owned. So... do we have any bets on who wins at this point is the question. I actually am very surprised that the Eastern Elites are being as competitive as they are, and now the battlefield has shifted over to this like left side of the map. Now they are actually attacking over Western territory. They're starting to kill some defensive structures. They're starting to pressure some production and get some workers killed and all this other stuff. Like that's actually really, really surprising to me. I was almost certain that when this guy wasn't really capable of doing fucking anything, it felt like, then I was sure we were going to be in a situation where they were done. But that Protoss player held on, and you know what? His Architects are probably responsible for a good number of this push, like just keeping these back and focusing down a bunch of units and whatnot. And seems like it was really, really big. So I'm impressed by that. We do not have a higher tier tech yet, but we are getting more tech from tier 1. The Zorki's Shroud is now a tier 1 structure. So, and it's fairly powerful. You can kind of think about it as a tier 1.5 structure in the same way that the Izcag is probably like a tier 2.5 or 2.25 or something. Like it's a little bit more powerful than your average unit that comes out of tier 2. The units that come out of the, that are enabled by the Izcag. I would say that about the Zorki's Shroud, but you also need a decent amount of money. Like, if you don't have a good amount of resources, you are in for some pain, you should say. You're in for like, not really being able to afford a lot of it. Here we are seeing the Cyprian remodel in action a little bit more, so you can soak that in and enjoy it. And it looks like it will be curtains for the Western Warlords. I don't think that they can hold on. Even though they have so many units still in like some areas of the map, it's only a matter of time, right? Like, this guy's not got enough income to justify this anymore. He did just set up this base, but it looks like it was getting harassed earlier. There's a fleet of vassals happening. Dude, look, Null Pointer actually decided to go and expand. I don't know what the fuck's happened over here, but they just really decided that they want to defend this player, so that's pretty funny. We probably need to adjust some request defense code. And yeah, you know, in general, so much improvements to the request system to make it almost usable. We're still going to be doing some more things to try to improve things, and like as we're finding out more, we're reverse engineering more of the AI. We're actually finding out more about like what's actually happening, doing things like figuring out specifically what it's like, you know, what is it actually doing? What are the conditions for it? What are the internals and all of that stuff? It's a pretty big deal, so I'm pretty happy with that and how that's been going. Obviously, the Western Warlord's not super happy because they got owned, and they also built multiple Iral Irises, even though I was pretty sure that I fixed... Oh, no, never mind. Never mind, false alarm. The Iral Iris is... I was thinking of the one over here. They built it in a dumb spot, but they didn't build multiple of them. That's a really big change, because previously it was pretty bad when they would build like multiple engineering bays when it was like 600 gas. Now it's 750 gas, and gas is much more harder to come by. The Iral Iris is 1,000 gas, and that's much more harder to come by as well. So it's just like... You could imagine if the AI was wasting that much money on every tech structure imaginable, like they were getting like, you know, duplicate tier 5 tech that costs you like 10K or whatever, like good luck, dude. You're never coming back from that. Like you're probably not going to be very competitive in that sense. So if you are, like, you know, the resource cheat can only go so far, right? So it definitely wouldn't accomplish that particular detail. It's just very silly. Oh, 3 bird. I think your days here are numbered. You are building a lot of units, but they're all workers because you have no fucking tech structures. Under certain circumstances like this, even though it's obviously futile, the AI probably should try to build a tech structure at a higher prio. I'm not really 100% sure why they wouldn't, but maybe we can look into like setting up some P needs or whatever in all the bases. Now that player need is actually fixed, like that was the main thing that I was just talking about with the tech structures, we should be able to use it more judiciously with and avoid ever feeling like, oh shit, there's going to be, you know, a lot of there's going to be a lot of problems with like the way that everything works. So I'm very proud of this Protoss player, dude. He figured out how to expand. That's something that even this Terran player couldn't figure out apparently, but I'm not sure. Oh, there you go. So this is, eventually I'm going to make it so that it probably only plays the sound once, but the cast sound, but you can see what I'm talking about there when there's the delay, and units can move around in it and stuff. So right now the AI is not very super intelligent about it, but they do indeed do stuff. So. And there you go. I have failed to achieve victory, but have I really? Because I'm pretty sure that we've all been victorious, and this is a spectacular display of epic. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this cast over. I hope you guys have enjoyed the fact that we have, like, you know, unlimited sound channels. We've got significantly enhanced AI. We've got reworked behaviors. We've got the fact that the whole Vespene gas change is in. And we've got, yeah, there's all sorts of stuff that we've got, dude. It's pretty epic. And we look through the stuff here. Is it any surprise the Zerg were leading the way in terms of units produced, right? Followed only by other Zerg here. End of all things apparently produced the least number of units, but I think he was the guy who, like, the one thing I've noticed in this map is that generally the inner player can get, like, owned out of being able to expand too many times. But it's a lower econ map, so that's just something that I have to maybe try and somehow theoretically account for in the AI script or something. Like, if you don't have that many bases, because there's not that many bases to take, because there's not that many bases in the map, then something different should happen or whatever, so I'm going to have to think about that. But, you know, that's kind of interesting. They also killed the most units, so they were pretty much the carry. Like, you look at their unit score alone, and that's pretty significant. They were leading the way the whole fucking time. They got the most resources. They did the most structures. I don't even know what that means. Apparently, oh yeah, we're not tracking this correctly because clearly they constructed more than 0, but that's a separate issue that we're going to try to fix before Fraudarchy. And speaking of Fraudarchy, that is indeed going to be coming up, so stay tuned. We're returning, right? We are returning. We're here. And that's it for this particular cast over. Check me out on Instagram in like a week or whatever. I don't have an Instagram, but I will be uploading more castovers. And that's the video. Bye.